drone fans, it's Rick here again from Drone Valley. I'm here today to do a clip on installing the ArgTek range extenders. Now, I've had a few viewers ask me after I did the last video introducing that product, is it really that easy to install? Like, what's involved in it? How much time does it take? So I thought rather than try and explain that in a video, I would just do the installation. So what I'm going to do today is take one of these two antenna range controller extender kits, and I'm going to install it on a Phantom 3 controller that I've got that's still got the stock antennas on it. So as I go through this, I'll take my time, so this is a longer video than normal, but I want you, if you're feeling bored or you want to skip ahead to a particular section, please feel free to fast forward through the video, but I want to take my time and go through it so that even the novice flyer can do it. It's a pretty straightforward installation. As I mentioned before, all the tools you'll need to do the installation are included with the kit. There are a few additional tools that might make it a little easier for you if you have them handy. Don't go out and buy them, but if you've got them nearby, grab them. Needle nose pliers would be handy, and a larger flat blade screwdriver would be helpful as well. But other than that, it's a very simple installation, and as I mentioned in the introduction video for this, you don't have to have any specialized electronics training. There's no drilling or gluing or soldering. It's a very straightforward, rip and replace. You're taking the stock antennas off and you're replacing them with these high gain paddles that are in this kit. And when you're done, 30 minutes later, you'll have a controller that will actually extend your range dramatically over the stock controller. So without further ado, let's get into it. I hope you find this helpful. If you have any questions at all after you've watched the video, please drop me some comments below and we'll get back to you. We appreciate you subscribing to the channel as well. That really encourages us to do more of these. So hopefully you find this helpful. Thanks an awful lot for watching. Alright, let's get into the upgrade. So before I start any project like this, I always like to take a minute at the very beginning and make sure I've got all the tools I need to finish the project and I've got all the parts included in the kit. So let's just set the controller aside for a second and open up the box and make sure everything I need to finish is in there. So this is the ArgTek range extender kit, and in the kit will be included two high gain antennas. Those are the ones that will replace the stock antennas on the controller when you're finished. In the bottom of the kit should be all the tools and parts I'll need to actually complete the installation. So if I look in the bag, what I've got in front of me is two screwdrivers. I've got a Phillips head and a hex head. You'll need both to open up the case and remove some of the components. I've got two wrenches which are used to tighten both of these bases that will replace the antennas that are on there. So these are the brand new bases that go on the controller that those new antennas here attach to. In addition to that, I've got protective caps that fit on the very end of these. So a lot of times if you're putting away the controller, you can unscrew the antennas and put the controller into your kit. You don't want to leave those ends exposed like that. You want to have something to protect them because dust and debris will get into those threads. They may even get into the ends of the unit. So those caps will actually slide on there very easily and protect those for you. So it looks like we have everything we need to get started here. So let me set that aside for now. And we'll get started with the installation. Okay, so the first step in the upgrade process is to actually crack open the case so you can get access to the inside so we can change out those stock antennas. Now if you look closely at the controller, what you'll see is a line running all the way around the edge of the controller, and that's where these two halves of the case separate. Now you might initially think, well, all the electronics will be mounted in the bottom, so I'll try and pry the top off. The honest truth is, and you'll see it in a minute when I open it up, all the electronics are basically mounted to the top of the case, and the bottom, for the most part, is really hollow. The only things in the bottom that you have to concern yourself with are this actual cover here, which covers a printed circuit board, the interface card here. That has to come off. And then inside the case, not that you have to mess with it, but it's good to know it, the rechargeable battery is mounted right in here. So what we're going to do to open this case up is pull this cover off. There are 4 hex head screws that have to be removed there. Once that cover comes off, there's a printed circuit board mounted underneath here that's attached to this with 3 Phillips head screws. So once we get this case loose, you take those 3 Phillips head screws out and then that printed circuit board's floating loose. Now the most dangerous part, or trickiest part I should say, of this installation is how that printed circuit board connects to the rest of the controller. You'll see a cable here, a larger cable at the bottom, and another cable over here that have to gently be disconnected from that printed circuit board. It's not a big deal, but it's something you want to be aware of, and I'll show you how to remove that when we get this cover off. The only other thing you have to be aware of is that the case itself is held together by 4 Phillips head screws that are hidden. And those screws are hidden underneath these rubber stoppers, and those again are Phillips head screws. These are hex screws. Inside there are more Phillips head screws. Now, one other thing I'd like to note, and this is just a practice for me, whenever I do a project like this, I always try to work on a surface that's got a little bit of friction to it, because if I work on a kitchen table or a wooden table, I find that those screws, which are really, really tiny, if you put them down, they're going to wander. And if they wander off the edge of the table, you're going to have a dickens of a time trying to find them. So what I tend to do when I do these type of projects is I'll take these 4 screws off, I'll put them in a pile together, I'll put the cover near it so I know they're related to the cover. These 3 Phillips head screws will go in a second pile, I'll put the printed circuit board near that. Same thing with the case, I'll put the case aside, put the screws near it, and that way when I reverse the project later, or reverse the process later to put it back together, it's obvious to me where all those screws go. Alright, so let's get into it. If you look at the kit, you actually have 2 screwdrivers that come with it. One of them is a hex head screw. I don't know if you can see that, but I'll try to get a close-up of it. The other one is a Phillips head screwdriver, pretty standard Phillips head. That's all you really need to pop this case open. So let's start over here first with this cover. Let me take that off first. So I'll remove these 4 screws, one by one. So there's one. See what I mean about it flying off, right? It just took off on me, but again, because this has got a bit of a surface to it, it's not going very far. Okay, there's the third one, and there's number 4. Okay, so once they're out, just make sure I get these last 2. Good. I want to pop this cover off. Now the cover is a little tricky to get off. You can't really force it off, so what I do with this is I'll put a hex head in here and just pop it. Then it'll actually pop open. Put that aside, and then I'll flip it over and I'll put all 4 screws in it so I don't lose them. I'll know where they are when I need them. Very simple. It's just a good housekeeping thing that I like to do to make sure that I have everything I need when I go to put it back together. Alright, so the printed circuit board inside that I described a minute ago is right here. And again, there's 3 Phillips head screws. You've got one here, and one there that need to be removed. And here are the 3 cables I was discussing. And if you rushed into this and didn't know that, you might actually miss these because they kind of disappear with the dark background behind them. The way these cables are held in there is they slide into the connector. But then if you look very carefully, and I'll try to get a close-up of this when I do the actual video, but there's a paddle over here, this black paddle. There's a white part, which is the connector, and there's a black paddle that holds them in. The way that paddle works is when it's down, it's clamping that cable in place. If I flip that paddle up, the cable can now be pulled out. And they're only held in there by friction. So you can use your fingernails and actually flip up that paddle. Now it's in the up position, same thing on the big one. Pull it up, it's up. Pull this one up, same thing. Now all 3 are up. And what that means are these cables are now free. They can be pulled out. So what I'm going to do is take that printed circuit board and loosen it. Try and get it out of here. Okay, there's one. Number 2, and you got to be gentle with this. There's no reason to rush. And the third. Alright, now you'll notice the printed circuit board is loose and floating. Then you can gently pull these cables loose. There's one. There's the second one. I always leave this one for last because I like to grip it when I pull it off. Printed circuit board's loose. Put that aside. Put the 3 screws right next to it like I'd mentioned earlier, and that way you know where they are when you need them. That's finished. Now to get at these screws, you've got to actually pull this rubber off. And if you look closely, if you give it a little bit of pull, there's double-sided tape that holds it on there. And if you look at these 2 bottom guys, you'll see a notch right there and a notch in the rubber. You want to make sure that you line those up when you put them back in. So just set these aside. There's one. There's the second one. These 2 side guys are held in with double-sided tape. And if you peel them off, the double-sided tape may stay on the rubber. It may stay on here. If you can get it off, that's great. If you can't, you can always go to Home Depot or someplace and find some double-sided tape to put it back on. It's not that big a deal. All right, there's the second one. We got lucky with both those where the tape actually stuck to the rubber. So let me set those aside. Now if I look down in those holes, I don't know if you can see it, there's a Phillips head screw down inside there, and these 2 on the bottom are very deep, so you've got to be just a little bit careful of when you remove them that you don't lose the screws. So let me get this one first. All right, that one's loose. Try this guy. And again, these are 4 Phillips. Okay, he's loose. Third one. All right, and last. Okay, so they're loose. Let's see if I can shake them loose. There's all 4 of them. And again, set those aside, a little grouping so I know where they are. And that's basically it. Now the bottom is loose. To remove the bottom, you just give it a pull and it separates. Now once it's separated, you can see that battery I was discussing a minute ago is connected here. Just pull that loose. So there's a pinch here, and you pull that up, and it pops off. And then set that aside. And here's really what we're working with today. Now, as I said before, this is that flat connector that came through. You probably could have left the other 2 connectors on there, but I always like to remove those. I don't like to take any chances that I'm going to pull too hard and rip it. So looking at this from the inside, just a couple quick things to point out. These 2 jog wheels are for your camera gimbal and for your other camera adjustments. Those are kind of in the way to get at these guys. So those have to come out of your way, and that's actually the next step we're going to go through, but that's pretty straightforward. You don't have to touch anything down here at all. Matter of fact, be very careful you don't touch anything down here, because if it's the winter time and you've got static electricity in the house and you build up a charge and you inadvertently touch that board, you could blow some of these components. They're very, very sensitive components. So stay away from this. All the work we're going to do is going to be up in this area. Now we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so the second step of the process is going to be to actually start taking out the old antennas, these guys. And if you look closely at the base of the antennas, they're kind of just popped in there, and we can squeeze this and pop them out. The challenge is that these jog wheels are kind of in the way for me to get at those bases. So I've got to pull those jog wheels out of the way. And if you look closely at them, you'll see there are two anchor points in the jog wheels. One has a Phillips head screw in it. The other one just kind of goes over the shaft for centering. Same thing on this side. It's over the shaft for centering, and this side holds it in. So essentially what you're doing are pulling these two Phillips head screws out and laying these jog wheels back out of your way. Now, a couple of words of caution before you start this section of the project. This printed circuit board down the bottom I'm pointing to here is extremely sensitive to static electricity charges, and it doesn't take much to actually damage the board. So if you're doing this kind of upgrade in the middle of the winter, you want to make very, very sure that if you've walked across the carpet, even if you haven't, it's a good idea to touch a switch plate to ground yourself, or to touch a water faucet to make sure any stray static electricity that's in your body doesn't get transferred to this board if you inadvertently touch any of these connections. So my advice would be to avoid this board completely if possible, but at least if you ground yourself, there'll be less of a chance of damaging something down there. This is very, very sensitive electronics. The other thing to be careful about, these jog wheels connect to the printed circuit board very, very fragile, thin ribbon cables. So when you disconnect this, be sure you don't yank on it too hard, because you could sever that cable very easily. So again, gentle's the way to go. Disconnect it, just lay it back gently. Same thing on this end, lay it back gently and you'll be good to go. All right, so let's get into it. Again, these are Phillips head screws. Let me take this guy first, seems like the easier of the two. I'm going to lay this down flat, just so gravity will help keep that screw in place until I'm absolutely ready for it to come out. All right, so there's the first one. Let me get that screw. Perfect, set him aside. I'll leave that there till I get the second one loose. Second one's got a little deeper screw. All right, almost there. There we go. All right, so is that loose? Not quite. There we go. All right, so we'll set this guy up. Just pop him loose. I don't want that screw to pop out and fall down inside the controller. All right, so that's loose. So again, same thing here, very fragile cable. So I want to set that back. Let me flip it over and get the screw out. Then set that guy down there. And then set this guy down out of my way here. That's perfect. Okay, so that gives us access to the bottom of those two bases. The next step will actually have us disconnecting these antennas. And if you look carefully, I'll just give you a little sneak peek here. That cable that comes down that connects the antenna snakes down along the side and connects to this printed circuit board. So if you look closely, there are two connections here, right there and right there, that are your antenna connections. And what's interesting to me is that they actually crisscross each other. So this one snakes its way down and then crosses over to that connection. This antenna snakes its way underneath, comes up, and snakes over to that connection. So I would assume they'd go directly down, but they don't. They actually crisscross. So I'm not sure it makes a big difference, but I never like to take chances, so I always like to follow the rules. So this one comes down. I'm going to make sure I connect a new antenna there, and this one comes across and connects over there. So that's pretty much it for step 2. Now we'll move on to step 3. Alright, so the next step in the process requires you to remove the stock antennas. Both of these antennas have to be removed from the case to give you clearance to mount the new bases. And the way that happens is you're going to pull up pretty hard on these antennas as you're squeezing down the base there. And if you look closely when I spin it around, you can see that there's a split in the shaft that allows you to actually clamp in there with a pair of pliers. When you do that, it gives you enough room in the shaft to pull it out. So you can actually pull hard, squeeze here, and it'll pop right out. Before you do that, I would caution you that the cables that run down to make the connection to the printed circuit board are really kind of tight. So I worry that if you're pulling really hard on this and it pops out unexpectedly, you're not ready for it. You may actually pull up the slack on that cable, and if you put too much strain in these connectors, you can damage the printed circuit board. So I like to disconnect these first and then remove the antenna up top. That way I've got all the play I need in the cables. And I'll do this in a couple of steps. If you look closely down here, you'll see that this one, again, it just pops out this direction. There's nothing behind it to block it, so you got plenty of room to work. This one, unfortunately, has a screw right behind it, and even though you can kind of wiggle this thing and get it out, I'm worried that you may bend the connection below it. So I always like to take the screw out when I'm doing this type of upgrade, and I know a lot of guys do the upgrade without taking the screw out, but for me it's just safer because I've got a little more room to work. So Now that I've removed that screw, I can take both of these out. And they come off very simply. The way you do that is just grab it, hold the base, grab it here, give it a little bit of a wiggle, and it'll pop right out. Same thing with this guy. Grab it near the base, give it a little bit of a wiggle, and it'll pop right out, and you're good to go. Now they're both disconnected, and you can see that I've got plenty of clearance now between this end and that end, so when I pull it out, it can work its way through. You may actually want to unsnake this all the way through first too, just so you've got all the wiring out, and I'll do that. So now the second part of this, I'll show you exactly how to remove these guys now that we've got them loose from the printed circuit board. Alright, so this next part is a matter of actually physically removing these antennas from the case. There's nothing pretty about this. It's really nothing elegant. It's just a matter of you applying enough pressure and squeezing. So it's a bit of a wrestling match to get it done. But what I like to do is to turn it sideways so I can pull gently on this side of it while I'm squeezing this end of it. Now I did say to you all the tools you need to do this are in the kit, and you certainly can squeeze this and push down with the Phillips head or the hex head screwdriver to do it. What would make it easier if you had a pair of needle nose or some type of pliers. And what you'll want to do is pull up on it in this direction and squeeze this. And if you do that for a little bit of time, what you'll find is it'll pop right out of the hole. There you go. So I loosened it up and it popped right out. And you can see it's split all the way up. All it is force fit through there. So once you get that free, you do the other one and you're ready to go. Now you have to obviously snake the cable out that's connected down this end. This one is easy because it just lays flat underneath, so you can pull it right out and slide the new one in. With this one, it's actually glued at 2 points up top here. And I'd mentioned before, these ribbon cables are very, very delicate. So what you'll do is pull this up gently and you'll break these two glue connections, and then the cable comes right out. So when you're doing that, just again, be aware of the fact that these cables are extremely delicate and they're right near the cable you're pulling on. You might want to check when you're finished, and I'll do that in a later step, that these are fully seated into the two connectors. Again, the same type of connectors that held the printed circuit board we removed earlier. Alright, so let me finish this up. I'll pull both those antennas out and we'll pick up right there. Alright, so once you finish the wrestling match of actually yanking these old antennas out of the controller, it should pretty much look like this. Now I've pulled them all the way out of the controller, completely extracted them, including the cables and the connector and everything else, and you can set those aside. You're pretty much done with those. The controller should look like this. You've got two clear shafts now that you can mount the new bases to, and everything is ready to go. The bases look a little bit different, and there's a couple of components to this that you want to be aware of. So the base itself has the nut on the bottom with the connection made to it. On the top there's another nut right here. You can loosen that up. It's only finger tight. Underneath that nut there's a washer. So you've got a washer and a nut. You've also got a shaft that slides down over top of it like a bushing assembly. And the way you want to put this thing together is you want to slide this through the shaft till it's up top. Put the bushing in from up top and center it, and it'll slide down in the shaft. And that keeps it from rattling around inside the shaft. Then I'll put a washer on top of it. I'll put a nut on top of that, and I'll finger tighten it. So once that's finger tight, we're good to go. Then I'll do the second one. So the second assembly looks exactly the same. It's got a nut on the top of it, a washer and a bushing, and you'll do the exact same thing. You'll pull the bushing off, you'll slide it up through the shaft, slide the bushing in from up top, that'll center it. Once it's in there, we lay the washer on top of it again, another nut, and finger tight. That's it. And when you finish with this step, you kind of want these pointing at each other, and then you're going to tighten them up. And the way you want to tighten them up is to use the two wrenches that come with the kit. So one wrench will hold it at the bottom, the other wrench you can tighten it up top. You'll tighten both of those in position. And then the next step is to snake these wires back down to these two connections. And remember, this one will actually make a connection over here. This one will make a connection over here. Now, snaking these back down, taking them out was pretty easy. Trying to snake those wires back down underneath could be a bit of a challenge. You don't have to be perfect with it, but sometimes if you get it down around these controls, it can be tricky to get it out the other end. And if you look closely on this end, trying to get it back out the spot where it was, there tends to be a bunch of cabling back here, and it kind of catches up in that space. So the worry is if you're trying to snake it through, this is all metal, and if that metal hits that cable, you may actually nick that cable. So to make things easier when you're putting it back together, you might want to pull this controller out of the way. And you could have done that earlier too to get the old wires out, but they tend to come out very easy. It's going back in where they get tricky. And pulling this controller out is really easy to do. You've already pulled one screw out here. If you remove that screw, and that screw, this whole assembly pulls out and you can set it aside. Then you can easily lay those cables down and make the connections underneath. So that's the next step we're going to do, and I'll show you how we do that. Okay, we've got the two bases mounted now. You can see them up top here, and I've got the protective covers on top of it. I actually angled these down so the cable's actually angle down this direction, and I did that on purpose so that I've got a little extra slack in case I need it for adjustments over here. I've snugged these down nice and tight. The one thing you want to be careful of is you don't want to leave these loose, because once those antennas go on there, you don't want them flapping around. You want them both to be able to stand up straight. So snug these down nice and tight, because once you close up this cover, the last thing you want to do is have to open it up again to get in there and tighten those up down the road. So once they're tight, you're good to go. Now, as far as the cabling goes, this is an easy one to snake through. It actually goes down between the two controllers, away from all the moving parts in here, snakes across the bottom, and it'll make the connection over here. And this one's a little trickier because it's got to go underneath this controller and pop out over here. And like I'd mentioned to you earlier, if you look closely, there's a lot of delicate cables in there. And when this thing pokes its head out from inside that hole, it's metal. It's really easy to nick that flat ribbon cable there. So if you're at all unsure about this, I mentioned earlier you can take this unit out. There's 4 screws that'll do that. One of them we've already removed, but you have to take this screw out, and this screw over here out. This whole assembly then will come out, and you can sit it down here out of your way, and you can run that cable through. When you've got the cable underneath it, you can put the assembly back in and tighten it down. So, you know, and again, I can't stress strongly enough that if you're at all unsure about this, you want to be as gentle as possible. Take the extra time necessary to do it safely. So if you're at all queasy about pulling that through there, just pull this guy out. It makes it a whole lot easier. Okay, so now that those cables are through, we've got to connect them to the main printed circuit board. That's a pretty easy thing to do. If you look at the cable end, you'll see that it's got a circular connection out here. It's got a hole in the center. The mating connection down here is a circular piece you're going to slide it into, and in the center that's a pin. So you need to make sure when you put this thing in that it's completely square when you push it down, and you should feel a physical pop when it goes into the connection. You'll actually feel it seat itself. That way you know it's in there all the way. So the way I like to do this is I'll do this one first, and I'll grab this with a pair of pliers, and I'll slide it down into the hole. And then if I slide it down in, you'll actually hear that click. I think you can hear that on the audio there. That way you know it's fully seated. Same thing with this guy. I'll get him down in the hole. I'll grab the end of it with the pliers, and he'll seat. You can hear that click in there. Then it's just a matter of dressing the wires. On this side, we're going to connect it up in the same channel it was before, push it out of the way. This one can sit where it is. And that's pretty much it. Now it's connected. Your antennas are connected and you're done there. And we actually start the reassembly of the cabinet. So we're going to backtrack on all the steps we did so far. So first thing we're going to do is throw the jog wheels back in. So I go with this one first. You know, pretty easy. Just have to center it on that piece. It sits over this one for centering. Make sure that the cables aren't touching anything or aren't pinched. You're going to put a Phillips head screw in there. Same thing on this side. You're going to want to make sure that you're gentle again with the cable. Slide it through the hole, put it on the centering pin, and put a Phillips head screw in there. So I'll do that, and then we'll be back. Okay, I've mounted both the jog wheels. So this jog wheel up top, just to remind you, centers on this post here, and it's got a Phillips head screw that holds it in there. This one, the same thing, it centers on this post, and it's got a longer Phillips head screw here. This one takes a little bit of work to tighten it down. You want to make sure both of these are seated firmly so they're nice and tight, and you're not going to have things rocking around, because again, once we close this up, we want to be done with it. So both of those are mounted. I did replace this screw down here, which is one we took out to actually break that connection earlier, and that screws back in. So pretty much everything we needed to do at this point is done. But I do like to take a breath before I close it up, because the next step is going to be actually closing the controller back up and then testing it. And before I do that, I'd just like to do a quick visual inspection to make sure that when I was in here I didn't knock anything loose. So you want to make sure all these ribbon cables are in nice and tight, particularly these 2 ribbon cables over here, because we were fiddling around over on this side with this cable, and sometimes these can get knocked out and you don't even notice it. The way you can tell that they're seated fully is, again, this is number 2. You can see the number 2 cable in there. There's a line right below that number 2. I don't know if you can see that or not, but that white line, that's the fully seated line. So if this is connected all the way into the connector, that should be right at the edge of that connection, and it is. You also want to make sure that these are down. These are nice and flat, which means, again, they're pressing that connection tight. So number 2 is good. Number 4 is good. I'm in really good shape. So I feel pretty comfortable that we're ready to go here, and we're going to start closing up the controller. Okay, the last step in the process is to actually put the controller back together, and it's probably the easiest part of the whole project. What you're going to want to do is make this connection again. This is your power connection from the battery, which provides power to the board. That just slides on, and you'll feel a very physical click there. Then the last part is this ribbon cable has to fit through this slot. This slot gives you exposure for where your printed circuit board gets mounted on the bottom. So we've got to actually gently put this together so that that falls through that hole. It might be a little tricky to see this. I don't know if you can or not, but I typically line that up here. And then when I close up the case, that piece marries up neatly with that. So it comes through and you're good to go. So let's put the case back together gently. There we go. All right, everything's seated, looks good, no gaps. This is through. I've got a connection here and a connection here. So now we'll just put the screws back in, which again, we've set those aside. So I've got 4 screws over here. Again, let's let gravity help us. I'll put these 4 screws in. We'll tighten them up. Okay, there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, all 4 screws in. So then the last step is really to reattach this printed circuit board that we took off earlier. And that printed circuit board, again, all 3 of these should be up because we're in the loose position, and they are. And I start with this guy, I attach him, then I lay it flat, I attach him, and I'll attach him. And I can use the pliers gently or a pair of tweezers to do that. Pretty straightforward. So let me do that. We'll bolt this board down, and then I'll close it up by putting the last piece on and put the feet back on. Okay, I've got the printed circuit board mounted. If you look closely at this, I go with the big connector first. So when I put this back in, I typically do this one first, and then I'll move on because I'm a righty. I'll go to this one next because that's a little easier to get on. Then once those 2 are tight, I'll put the 3rd one on and click it in. What you want to check before you close this thing up, obviously, is that they're fully seated. And the way you can tell you've got it in there great is this has got a line across the bottom of it. You want that line to be perfectly parallel with the white connector. If it's a little skewed like this, you may have connections here and not have connections over there. So if you look at it closely, that white line is exactly parallel with that connector, so I know that's fully seated. With these 2 guys, they actually feel, you can feel them seat when they go in, but if you want to check, there's a white line on the cable that runs again against that edge there, and the same thing up here. Once they're in, you want to make sure that these are flipped fully down, because remember I described earlier, when they're down, they're actually making a connection to the cable, a nice and tight connection. So everything in there looks really good to me. I put the 3 screws in to hold the printed circuit board down. Then the last thing we've got to do is put this cover on, which is again a pretty straightforward operation. You just seat the cover like this, and once it's in, you put the 4 screws in it. I'll do that really quickly. Use the hex on this again. There are 4 hex screws. There's 1. Number 2. And then once we're done with this, we're going to actually put the antennas on. I'll show you how to do that in a second. And then the last step after we're done with that is just take it out and test it with the bird. Now what I like to do is the first time I test this, I'll keep the bird close. I may only lift the drone up off the ground I should say, a couple of feet, just make sure I can do some basic communications with it. I'll check to make sure that I've got good signal, check the signal strength, make sure everything is working there. I put these covers on before, I'll take those off. And the way the antennas go on, it couldn't be easier. They're just finger tight, so you're going to just put the antenna on there and spin it until it's finger tight. The proper orientation for these is the label facing you and you flip them down. So that's 1. I don't know if you can see that or not. And I'll put the second one on here. So again, I just put them on, spin them on finger tight. Once they're on, you can spin them around until the back faces you. And that's all you need to know, and you're good to go. I keep them flat like that, so they're completely up this direction. What you're trying to do is create pretty much a flat surface against where you're flying. So this is where the direction of the antenna is going to broadcast mostly. So you'll want to keep that in the direction of your flight. Plenty of room here for your tablet holder above it. There's no interference whatsoever. And that's pretty much it. Now you can, if you want, when you're putting this thing away, leave it like this and slide it down into your case. I have friends of mine that use these and actually spin them off, so it's not a big deal. If you take these paddles off during transport, so again, they're only finger tight, so you spin them off. Get that guy off there. And then before you put it in your case, obviously you want to protect the end cap, so put these back on. Then it's ready to go. So that installation and deinstallation of those antennas took me 10 or 15 seconds. These can go in your case, you know, next to your controller, and you're all set and everything's ready. So good luck with this. I hope it was helpful. We're going to take it outside now and test it. And we'll probably do a video later this week that explains the increase in power you can get from this. So we'll give you some comparisons before and after, how the controller performs against a stock controller, so you can see the big difference these antennas make. So thanks again for watching. I hope it was helpful, and I hope you enjoy your ArgTek range extenders. Alright, so that's it for this video. If you followed the steps that I outlined, your controller should look something like this. If it doesn't look something like this, something went horribly wrong about midway through the process. Just go back to that step and start from there. If you have questions I didn't answer in the video, please drop me a message below and I'll get back to you. I like this kit an awful lot because I love to put the drone up. And anything I can do to modify the controller or modify the drone to make it safer or fly further, I'm all over it. And this kind of kit that doesn't require a lot of expertise and I'm not really meddling with a lot of the technology inside, is pretty simple upgrade for the average person, and the dramatic difference it makes in your flying will be apparent. Now I will follow this up with one more video that shows you a real-world test of this controller that's been modified with the ArgTek range extenders against a standard stock controller, just like I did with the reflective extenders before. So you'll get a chance to see that maybe next week sometime when I get a chance to finish that test up, and it'll prove to you technically how much more power these antennas put out over the stock antennas. But I guarantee you, if you put these on and you start flying with them, you're going to notice a tremendous difference in your ability to keep track of your drone, to keep your video rock solid, and have better control even in close. So hopefully this has been helpful. I love doing these kind of videos. We'll do a lot more of them. If you have questions, again, please drop them below. Spread this around, subscribe, share the video, because we love getting new subscribers with just a ton of varied experience in the drone business. So anyway, thanks an awful lot for watching. I hope this has been helpful. We'll see you again soon.